In 1957, the Film Research Institute was notified that a conspicuous valise had been discovered on the grounds of a former mental asylum in Danvers, Massachusetts. Inside this case, we found several fragments of a primitive film, along with a letter written by a man named Balthazar Hyppolite to his mistress. On closer examination, we discovered that a second text had been written between the lines of this somewhat erotic letter in lemon juice. This secret text referred to a motion picture made by Hyppolite, entitled The Mystery of Locus Solus. Most extraordinary of all, the letter was dated September 13th, 1879. On the back of the letter, there was a diagram of Hyppolite's motion picture camera, a machine remarkably similar to Dixon's kinetograph, which Thomas Alva Edison would patent 12 years later. Who was Balthazar Hyppolite? What was the meaning of these enigmatic images? And why had his film disappeared? Poring over the records of the Danvers Historical Society, we discovered that a French immigrant named Balthazar Hyppolite had indeed settled in Danvers, Massachusetts in 1870, where he earned his living as a portrait photographer. He had been born in Bohemia, son of a Jewish shoemaker, and he had changed his name to Balthazar Hyppolite shortly after emigrating to America. Strangest of all, we found a series of articles concerning Hyppolite's mysterious death. In 1880, he was found in his studio one day, shot twice through the head. His murder was never solved. Could Dixon or Edison have been aware of Hyppolite's invention? Had either of them ever known Hyppolite? With some apprehension, I next turned to Edison's collected correspondence. In a letter written in 1875, Edison describes an encounter with a photographer.
The man claimed to be a French aristocrat, but there was something false about his genteel airs. And then the imposter unveiled his invention, a machine that could make photographs move and come to life. I candidly told him that I thought his novelty had no practical applications and no future.
No future. Was Balthazar Hyppolite the man Edison describes? If so, could Dixon and Edison have stolen Hyppolite's invention and claimed it as their own? And finally, had they played a role not only in suppressing his discovery, but in orchestrating his death as well? I grappled with these troubling enigmas for several months, but could find no conclusive evidence, and so I finally gave up and filed the images away with our other curiosities. However, 1 year later, we made a dramatic discovery. 20 more fragments of negative had been recovered from the wreck of an American ship, which had sunk en route to Europe in 1868. The negative had been sealed in the statue of a saint. I carefully restored and printed the pieces of brittle negative stock, although the images on several strips instantly faded upon exposure to daylight. The results were dazzling, surpassing all my expectations. this be the lost mystery of Locus Solus? Possibly the world's first motion picture? I decided to attempt a reconstitution of the entire film. But there were difficulties. Each fragment appeared to be just one shot from the finished film. And the fragments appeared to be arranged in no particular order. Where should I begin? The film is set on the labyrinthine grounds of a secluded European estate. It features 3 performers. That was all I knew for certain. But the images just didn't seem to tell a story. One day I ran across some Super 8 footage that I had taken while on a picnic with some friends. I began to wonder if Hyppolite's film itself might not be a home movie of sorts. Merely a series of vignettes documenting a tranquil day in the country at the estate of an aristocrat. The 3 have a picnic on the grass. The woman amuses herself with a kaleidoscope. Afterwards, she entertains the others with a series of dramatic poses. Perhaps she's an actress, a mime. The young man takes some photographs of her. The woman wanders off with the photographer. They kiss in front of a trompe-l'oeil painting of a romantic landscape. Yes. I decided to publish my discovery in Cahiers du Cinéma and sent in my article along with a videotape of the complete footage. Several weeks later, I received a telephone call from Bernice Lemire, a film critic with a prestigious magazine. Bernice and I had dated years earlier while at graduate school, but had not seen each other since. I met her at a coffee shop that had been a favorite haunt of ours during our university days. She said that she could tell me no more at present, but that she and her husband, Anthony von Goss, an old friend who had been a rival for Bernice's affection while at school, planned to publish their own interpretation in a monograph that would be appearing in several months. When I pressed her for more details, all she said was,
"The film is extraordinary, but I'm afraid that you've missed its real importance. You see, I've discovered that these images contain a meaning which make Hyppolite's real intention frighteningly obvious. This meaning has far-reaching implications, Karsten."
That's very interesting. Can you tell me some more about that?
No, I really can't tell you any more than that. I really shouldn't be telling you what I've told you already.
Maybe we could work on it together.
I'm afraid that you've missed the real story of the film.
What had she seen that I had overlooked? I remembered Bernice's words. Could she have meant that the mystery of Locus Solus did have a storyline? One that would unlock its secret? Spurred on by Bernice's rebuke, I became obsessed with the reconstruction of the film. I juxtaposed the images endlessly in my mind. And yet, despite all my efforts, I couldn't make heads or tails out of the hodgepodge of material I had inherited. What had begun as the opportunity of a lifetime now seemed a curse to me. I couldn't go on. And then, 3 months later, I was drawn to a painting in the window of an antiques shop. A mythological love triangle. A sea nymph and her lover are embracing on the foreground shore. But the nymph's rejected suitor sees them from a distant cliff. He will rise up and murder his rival. Could the film, which once seemed so idyllic, actually tell a tale of betrayal and revenge? Odette is married to Ludovico, a young photographer. Antonio, a baron, has invited them to spend several days on his estate, Locus Solus. Inspired by Odette's ethereal beauty, Ludovico takes some photographs of her posing as a saint. Afterwards, the 3 have a picnic. Antonio flirts with Odette. Ludovico tries to conceal his jealousy. Antonio asks Ludovico to take photographs of the statues in the garden, leaving him free to show Odette the rest of the estate. He amuses her with an optical toy. Antonio shows Odette the romantic view from the top of the highest tower. Timidly, he makes an advance. Odette gazes deeply into Antonio's eyes. She is smitten. He invites her into a pavilion on the grounds. Sometime later, Ludovico passes the pavilion and sees Antonio inside with Odette, who's reclining on a chaise in a compromising position. Enraged, he rushes off. In revenge, Ludovico decides to coat one of the photos he has taken of Odette with a poison that is fatal to the touch. He presents this deadly gift to Antonio and departs. But Odette appears, and she innocently selects the lethal one. Of course. Odette walks away with the photo. She dies by the lake. But something still troubled me about the scene in Antonio's villa. Did Odette submit willingly to Antonio? Or did Antonio take advantage of Odette, resorting to extreme measures? And the poisoned photo. I projected a blow-up of Ludovico's means of revenge and noticed that if viewed from a particular angle, a death's head appeared in the shrubbery. Had Hyppolite planted an allusion to an actual bungled crime of passion? Eureka. Eagerly, I set up in a rendezvous with Bernice to show her my ingenious solution. However, when I arrived at the gates of the Von Goss villa, Bernice was gone. She had decided at the last minute to join her husband on the flight to London. They were on their way to their publishers with the final manuscript of their work. By a cruel twist of fate, Bernice and Von Goss's plane crashed in the north of France, possibly an act of sabotage. Bernice was dead, Von Goss in a coma. I immediately flew to the site of the crash to salvage what I could of her work. All I could recover were several hopelessly burnt pages of the manuscript. A month later, as if to make up for this loss, there was another find. Several fragments from the film were discovered by workers in the torch of the Statue of Liberty, which Bernice and I had visited so many times, so many years ago. In addition to more images of the woman in ecstasy, some of the new footage showed the same woman undergoing a fit of some kind. In the cache of new images, there was one in which Antonio appears to be hypnotizing Odette. Consulting my personal library, I fell upon a book by the 19th century French neuropathologist, Jean-Martin Charcot. Charcot had clearly documented the bodily attitudes of his hysterical patients. I was struck by the remarkable similarities between the gestures of his patients and those of the actress in the film. Faced with this new information, I had little choice but to attempt yet another reconstruction. Antonio, a renowned doctor, runs the asylum of Locus Solus. He commissions a photographer, Ludovico, to photograph an hysterical woman, Odette, who is an inmate there, for a study he is conducting. Antonio demonstrates his hypnosis techniques on Odette. Ludovico takes photographs of her to document her behavior. Later, he presents Antonio with the photos of Odette and departs. Odette appears, and Antonio puts her into an hypnotic trance using Ludovico's photographs. She falls asleep by the lake. Ludovico, having followed her, gently wakes her. Urgently, she beckons him towards the Temple of Mercury, a ruin in the garden. He enters the temple and explores the crypt. He discovers a document which reveals that Antonio has abducted healthy individuals and transformed them into hysterics by means of horrible experiments. Antonio, who saw Odette give the signal to Ludovico, is leading her to the top of the highest tower on the estate. Ludovico sees them struggling on the tower. He races to her rescue.
And yet so many of the images were still missing. If more were found, perhaps a different story would emerge. What am I doing? No one can piece together this material. It's presumptuous to try.
It was on that day at the picnic that I first realized I was losing Bernice. Her attraction for Van Goss had always been a mystery to me. I never thought of him as particularly handsome or even intelligent. And I often wondered if their union had been founded on something other than true love. Six and a half months later, Anthony Van Goss awakened from his coma. He was suffering from amnesia. However, after viewing my film countless times, his memory of it returned.
Try to remember, Anthony. Did Bernice ever mention anything else to you about the film?
Nothing. Was he lying? Bernice had kept the secret from her own husband. Van Goss seemed deeply disturbed that Bernice had never enlightened him, and I must confess that his frustration gave me great satisfaction.
Bernice had taken the secret with her to the grave. There was nothing more I could do.
Documentary you have just seen was found in 1991 in a locker at the Danvers train station. That locker had not been opened for over 20 years. Karsten Fitch, the narrator of the documentary, was dismissed from his post at the Film Research Institute in 1969 after he had scratched out the eyes of every actor in a collection of priceless negatives. A month later, he checked himself voluntarily into the Danvers Mental Hospital, where he lived the rest of his days. Although we question the validity of some of his findings, we remain hopeful that the complete film will someday turn up. And when it does, a definitive version will be presented to the public.